Well, you don't have sound because I didn't unmute myself. So, good morning. Should we start over? How about it? Let's start over. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Monday Morning Jumpstart. I am Jason Meyer, the same guy you couldn't hear for the last 3 minutes. So today what we're going to do is we are going to go over 6 paintings. I'm going to give them up to 15 minutes apiece. And so within the next hour and a half, you could have the experience of getting 6 paintings done. So just one way to spend your morning if you want. And what we were doing before you guys let me know I had no sound, is we were looking at a study I started yesterday before we jump started. Okay, so let's get back at it. So, as I was saying, good morning, Susan. Good morning, good morning. So started off with some sound problems, but we should be back. So yesterday, I laid in my darks. I'm looking for more than my dark pattern, I was thinking oranges, but I'm thinking dark too, warms against cools. The next step is I put my finish in, the light, where it's going to hit. Then I had to decide how I wanted to step off that light. And that's why I did that. I thought that might be trees in the background, and it still might. Or it might be clouds or fog with just a little bit of sky coming through. So from there, I'm going to come over here and put my foreground trees. So basically right here, and I don't want a straight line, but all of this will be foreground. Have a dark sweater on, shadow, darks back here, and all these darks are going to say forward. He will be more forward than this, but this is going to be the most forward of all the trees. That idea is completed with the dark sweater. Okay. How about now? Okay, I'll get my act together. That's why we're warming up on this, so I can get my act together this morning. Goodness, this would be a bad show without you guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, just remember, you got an introvert streaming, so we're going to have some of these troubles. Anyway, I was saying the dark's completed here, so foreground. So all of this is foreground. Right? And although he will be in front of this, these trees will be in front of all the other trees. Then I went ahead and taken the time to darken it. I think I did a couple. And by the way, we're going to have grass up here. And then I thought, we don't need any light up here either. So let's extend this foreground dark across here. And what that's going to do is it's going to frame up real nicely for us to get the rest of the painting in. By the way, can you already see where this thing's going to finish? Right? Do we already have a finish right here? Is this the brightest thing? So no matter what stage you're at, see if you can't immediately establish the order of things, whether it's lay-in or not. Okay? For those of you who are just beginning, really take it down to step by step and learn the steps. Get used to the process. My theory is let's learn to work. Learn the process. What do we do each month? How do we go through this? Then you do the work to learn. Okay? So we're going to take our process and we're going to repeat it. So foreground, and I'm showing you this again just so you can see how I think and build a painting before we get into what I'm going to suggest on yours. Because you're going to see me go back to a lot of yours and establish these initial big things if we haven't already. Okay, so do we've got the scene there? Is that the last one of it? Oh, we got one more. We've got one more. So this is just a lay-in. But I spent over an hour finding my colors, the color scheme I wanted, and that was on video for the studio time yesterday. Then after that, I was trying to remember. Let me see here. Let's go back to a window. And there's a way I can find this information out. Oops, it doesn't have the timestamp I was hoping for. Okay, but if I remember right, it was probably 4:30 or maybe 5:30 before I finished this. And we live streamed from 1:30 to 2:30. So I spent 2 to 3 hours to get to this stage after I worked out my compositional design and my color scheme. I think almost everybody does not allow enough time to solve the problems that need to be solved. Okay, 8:10. All right, everybody should have a chance to get here, get warmed up. I had a chance to unmute my microphone so you guys could hear me. So let us get to work. Let us get to the iPad. And we're going to start. So if you reference this later, we're going to do 6 paintings today. And I'm going to give up to 15 minutes of painting. I've even got my trusty little timer here. I have a way of straying. So I've got a little timer. We're going to set it for 15 minutes. And we're going to have at it. So we're going to work on some fish. Then we're going to work on a portrait. Then we're going to work on some petroglyphs. Then we're going to look at some composition of dogs on a beach. And we're going to talk about painting with 3 horses. And then a really cool little fairy with candles and a busy thing that could be really turned into something I think really, really nice. So that is the schedule for today. So it sounds like we've got a lot of work. So let's go. I'm going to hit start. Our 15 minutes starts and we're at it. You are welcome to type in any questions you have in the chat. I'll do my best to keep an eye on it, especially if I'm working on your work and you'd like to say something. So we're still in charcoal here, and I'm really excited about this one. I'm excited because you're excited, and you're stepping out and doing something completely different. And for me, even at this stage, I can feel your enthusiasm. And that really matters. That really matters. We've got to know what we're doing, and we've got to do it well. But without that element of enthusiasm, something is lost. Something is lost. So what are we going to do here? If I understand this right, we've got a pond. It looks like this guy's just kind of sticking his head up and then fading back underwater. It looks like this guy's the same thing. He's a little more on the surface, though, rather than going down into space, right? This one feels like he's going down into space because of the way he's stacked, right? Whereas this one is going down, but not at the same rate of speed as that. Can you guys see that? So I think you've done a very good job on that, and that is a big part of this. By the way, something if you want more drama or if you need more movement in here, like everything, like a good story, sometimes this takes exaggeration. So for instance, if this guy here goes from here and he's really down there, you know, you can cut that to give him a steeper angle. If you need to. What I'm talking about is just possibilities here. Right? And the same is true with this guy. We have total freedom because we can stretch him out all across the surface where maybe he comes above the surface, down and up. Or it can be just one long movement down. Or it could be a movement where he goes down and it looks like to me here, maybe that tail's flashing up again. Right? So there's all of these possibilities, and what you want to do is get in there and start playing with them. And I love this because that's exactly what she's doing, is she's playing with this idea. All right, did we do anything else? All right, let me wake up and we're going to open a new layer. And let's take this down. I'm going to start thinking about this as paint. And she wants dark water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of get a base dark down. And then we're going to work out of there. Rather than working off kind of a base light of the paper. And again, this is just visually, I imagine while you're doing this, you were thinking about different things, right? You're thinking about the movement and the placement. And that's generally how I work. But very quickly as we can, once we get this thing figured out, we want to put it in terms of mass, or another way of saying that, in terms of 3 values, right? Our dark, our gray, our color, our second value, and our white. Okay, and then, right, these are just kind of bubbles, so they're still, or not bubbles, ripples. Ripples in the water. And this bottom guy's jumping out of the water, if I understand this right. Or maybe just swimming towards the top. Maybe that was my imagination. I mean, he's not a dolphin. But, all right. Whatever we want to do, though, we can do. We can do because we are creators. We are the captains of this ship. Captains. Remember, exhale, Captain. You're in charge. But relax. Exhale. Have fun. Have fun. Get us home safely, but let's have a good time. Okay, and you know, it may seem like I'm going a little slow here, but especially like when I start off in the morning, or even if it's not the morning when I'm just getting started with my painting, this is almost like my stretch before we're really going to play the game. Right? You got to get everything pumping, and we don't want to hurt anything. Don't pull a muscle. All right. Then let's just even this tone out a little bit. Wow, is this going to be fun or what? I think so. Right, and so after I have a general base for that water, and you had talked about making it pretty dark. Which you can do, and I know some of the examples you're looking at have that. But what'll happen is if we do that water dark, then what is the shadow of our fish going to be? How are we going to get the shadow of the fish to come off of the water to make the water seem like it's background. I mean, this is a serious problem we have. Very, very serious problem. We might need to get a little legal advice. But luckily for us, it is a problem that already has a solution. And as I always say, if it's been solved, don't spend your time resolving that problem, right? Figure out your options on how to solve the problem, how it's been done in the past. And then, you know, for whatever your purposes are, use those solutions or modify those solutions to your liking. And in here, we're not going to be able to do it necessarily in black and white. But what you'll do is if that water goes dark, you don't want it to have really any chroma, or it's got to be pretty stinking neutral. And if that is the case, then how we solve the shadow problem is the shadow of the fish then is going to have enough color in it that it advances in front of that dark. Does that make sense? If you guys have been sticking around this week, you know that how we really want to talk and think about color is not red, blue, orange. Is it coming forward or is it going back? More forward? Not so much, not so much, not so... Oh, too much because we switched. That's still forward. Ah. That's going to be really quiet right there. And then as we separate, those notes get more impactful, louder. So what I could imagine then is if this was really dark water, and we still need a light direction, and you know, this is always a good one. And I think because that's going to show our form up. So if that is the light direction, then for the shadow on the fish, what we could do? Well, if it's a koi, it is white in shadow. And we could warm that up just a little bit maybe. And now we just have to test. Does that come in front of that? Well, it's really hard to tell, isn't it? Why is it hard to tell? Well, because it's next to white. And that white is just blinding us. So, let's establish our white on here. And if we're doing form, so that seems a little yellow to me. And then we'd be back in the dark water. Okay, by the way, this is basically the same sort of problem that we had with the dogs running around. Right? Is how do we get our focus on the animal and not the background? Now, this is not how I teach in class for you guys to do this, but I did want to show you, and I know you're enthusiastic about this. It can be done, but it's a different rhythm than we teach, right? I forget when it was. Yes, sometime this week I threw a big fit about the shadow being darker than the background. The shadow is darker than the background. The shadow is darker than the background. The shadow is darker than the background. I threw a big fit. And now I'm here going, oh, well, it doesn't have to be that way. This is much harder. And the reason I insist on it being one way in class is so that you stick with something long enough to see it, right? Because I don't want you just doing it because I told you to do it. I want you to do it because you see what's possible and you see what it does. Okay, so if we started like that, then yeah, that shadow comes in front of that background, right? Then how you're going to modify those then is, I know this is jumping out of the water, but let's pretend that's going in the water. If, let's say till like right there, he's out of the water, then what I'm going to do is the further down he goes, like let's pretend this, it's going to be less and less and less. And then as he comes out of the water, it'll be more and more and more. Right? So that's essentially how you're going to solve those problems. And then what you've got to do then is you want to remember, okay, how do we want to get around this painting? Well, don't worry about, you know what? Don't worry too much about this one. And I want to say this for a particular reason. This person is working on making color notes right now, right? Working on making color notes. So what we want to do is just really focus on doing that. And where that's going to be difficult, and that is making color notes, is right here. As you go underwater and these colors get less and less and less as you go deeper. And I was just saying, I think this guy's jumping out of the water, Barbara, if you just got here. You'll be able to watch this later again. But if we were pretending it's going underwater like this guy, so you're going to have cleaner color here, and then the minute it goes under the water, it's got to start getting less and less and more influenced by the water, because we're getting closer to just the pure watercolor and further away from the actual color of the fish. Those transitions. So what you need to do for color spots then is you got to mix those colors up and lay them down, rather than having a landing and then bridging that. Right? You want to think of putting down actual tiles, like the color that you were building with this was almost a mosaic. And that's one way of thinking of color notes, right? It's usually the cleanest way. It's really not taking into consideration too much edge, and that's where the notes get more expressive. Okay. Whoa, look at that. We are, you know what, Susan? You and I are connected. We are like cosmically connected somehow, because I just answered this question before I even saw this. Well, I didn't see it consciously. Maybe I saw it unconsciously. So when I say a color note, our time's up on this one. You guys are trying to get me to go over today. I know what you're doing. Like those bad kids in school that don't want to do their homework. So let's see if we can get the teachers to keep talking. All right, I see what you're up to. So if we're on the head of this fish, right, I could imagine putting up a big piece of paint and just laying that down. Then that would be a color note. And then if I picked up this, and by the way, I would adjust that shadow, but if I was happy with that shadow, then I could pick up another big piece of paint, clean piece of paint, and with a clean brush stroke, lay that down. Usually that's what people are talking about when they say color notes. So that's where they start, how they start the under. And then if I was to modify those notes, the softening the edge between those would be modifying that. If I was to let this go off and soften that edge, that would be modifying that. If I was to take a background and then very cleanly cut into that shape. That is modifying that note. If I let that run into the back, that's modifying that note. Right? And so another way of thinking about this is the delivery of the paint. I tell stories about how you want to pick a paint up, right? You're going to call Bob at Home Depot. Bob, I need some yellow ochre over there on the lower third. Can you put it over there on the back side of that 40 acres for me? And then just a big deposit of paint comes and goes, blah. Well, blah. And then we're going to manipulate that paint. Well, if you're more thoughtful about it, rather than having that Bob just dump that paint, is there a way that you could lay it down so it might be closer to what you want? So that's one note, and this is another note. So what's not a note of paint? Do you ever do that? You just kind of peck at the canvas. Peck at the canvas. Just that's not really a note. I mean, you can form this into a note, but the problem with this kind of painting is you're not thinking in color shapes. It's actually that you're not thinking in color shapes. Whenever you're doing that, you're not thinking at all. You're unengaged. You're just it's your task to throw that on there, just like it's a conveyor belt. So color notes is basically getting away from that activity of just throwing paint on there with your brush, however, and thinking about how you want to lay it down. Okay, I hope that helps. How did my first 15 minutes go to 30 minutes? Oh my God. All right, I hope that helps. Barbara, if you watch this and then you have questions, come back to me. But basically I was talking about how you're going to solve your light shadow problem with a dark background. Okay. Then here we have a beautiful granddaughter, and this isn't unlike yesterday's, is it? When we really want to separate. Now, let me talk about what's going right here. Because often students go, hey, I'm doing what you're telling me to do, and then you're telling me to do something. How was I supposed to know? It's all a step. Once you do step one, then I'm going to tell you, okay, this is what's next. And then this is what's next. This is what's next. What is absolutely working right here? This wins. She wins. This is where we go. Right? The background is weaker than your dark and weaker than this. So this goes back to how I teach form, which was different than the koi pond. So the dark and the light and the color step off of our background. Okay? One thing I don't think we've done is there's a fourth piece missing, is I don't feel the shadows quite as clean. And I feel some of the measures are off. Okay? So I'm going to try to address two things here. The first thing is kind of the measure between the four values. And then the second thing is going to be degree or wait a minute, did I say measure? I'm confusing myself. I'm painting and trying to talk at the same time. Oh yeah. So the measure of the values that are there, and then plus getting a clean shadow to really talk about form. So let's talk first just about the form of what's happening, and then let's collect everything, okay? And before we do that, let's set up a little key here. So if this is our dark hair, let's just make a little dark here that we can come pick up. So that's like my palette of paint. And let's see. I'm trying to find that background that I think is going to work the best. And I think something in here maybe. So if I make the background like that, that may be too dark for that background. That's all right. We'll change it here in a minute. And then our color, and again, we're talking general. Our color being here. And then of course, the whites. Okay, so there's our 4 values. And now let's talk about what we're seeing in terms of what we want to show the viewer. The problem is, in order to see paint, we've got to think flat like plywood and flat sheets of plywood. But we're talking about round objects. And so what has to happen is we've got to put these flat notes, flat pieces of color, and then what we do is we come back and we modify the edges so that it reads as round. But if you come inside of this and try to make this a bit darker and then that a little bit lighter and that a little bit lighter and that a little bit lighter and that, and then let's change that, and then that goes a little darker and that goes a little darker and that goes a little lighter. In other words, if you break up this big piece of paint, the result is it does not carry. What does carry mean? It means when I'm standing across the room, when I shrink down to where I can barely see this anymore, I can still clearly see that white note I just put on there because it carries so strong. It carries so strong that I can see it long after the image is gone, right? The details of the image, and I can make out what it is. That's what is meant by a note carries. And paintings were meant to be seen across the room. And so very early on, the painters learned that if they wanted their paintings to be seen, to be impressive to the king, to the pope, to whoever it was, that it had to have immediate impact upon entering the room. Well, that immediate impact comes from these large, flat pieces of paint. Okay, well, that's pretty easy to do that, but then again, how do we round this off? So that's what we're going to talk about today in this painting, okay? And before we do that, let's get back to my original point. Again, there's just kind of a lot to understand. Most of it is people don't understand the language of paint. So if we were to pretend this is flat and this is flat, because we have to think in flat pieces to be paint, and then at some point it hits the corner and turns back. At some point it hits the corner and turns back. The same here, at some point it hits the corner and turns up, hits the corner and turns up, and then goes across again. So, with what we have over here at the side, how do we do that? Oh my goodness. This is a little confusing because we've got to add another value. And what value do we need to add? Well, since with the dark hair, that black kind of has its own thing, we've got to get the skin tone in shadow. And you mentioned to me that this is a Latina, and so she's got, you wanted to know how to get the darker, richer skin. Some of that darker, richer skin actually will come from the shadow color. Meaning, like, so there is the corner, right? So this, if I give this a little more, see how that's a little more red? That will actually have really more to do with how the skin tone appears than the light, is the color of that shadow. Okay, so you could play with that. Swing it from yellow and orange over to red and see how that affects things. I'm going to start with right here. And again, just to be obvious, we work from big, crude, gross. And so on all these corners, that's where the shadow is going to come. Right, all these corners right down there, up through there. Then what does it do? If the light's coming like this, because you got the highlight right there, so that tells me that the light's coming from there. This will be in shadow, and then we'll also get that wrapping around there, and that'll be in shadow. Under the nose, and then pinch that eye, right? Because you notice this is anything that falls over like this is getting this color. We go down. We go down. So that initial thing I did was just not for fun. It gave me information about, okay, this plane turns at this point and it's going to turn down to this color. And I'm not going to have like 37 values of shadow. Shadow is the absence of light. You can't be more or less absent. Absent is absent. And then over here, as that turns over, right, we can pinch in with the nose with that shadow. You see how that helps that nose begin to arise off of the face? And that might come in again, right, because those are balls. And if you have a ball, light's coming this way, it's shadowed like that. So to show the ball of the eye, that shadow happens. That shadow happens. That shadow happens. Maybe a little cast shadow. The hair would cast a shadow on the skin on this side. And so then that puts the hair on top of the skin rather than next to it or behind it. Okay, and then if the hair went back or something, then you would lose the shadow. Okay, and so nothing, since we turn this corner right here, nothing over here can have light on it unless it's sticking out, right? So the only thing that could catch light would be something sticking out from the shadow. And again, that's going to be dark. And then if we have a dark black, what we want to do is we want to make that a bit warmer. So that has just a little red in it. And notice how as I get darker, then that shadow no longer seems so dark, does it? Because of the relationship I'm setting up. And that'll work real nice in there. But you don't want to just do the round of the eye. Let that continue. There's eyelashes in there and shadows. Why? Because it's going to be an interesting shape. It's a more interesting shape than that. Does that make sense? You just have to have a more interesting shape than that. For you guys who've been around since the beginning, I've already lied to you. You know, 15 minutes a thing, and I forgot to hit my timer. So if you came from my organizational skills, you're going to be sorely disappointed. All right? Especially the more I get into thinking about art and color and these principles and how to move and get into these ideas, the less I can adhere to time. And that's just the nature of this thing. So, sorry guys, I don't know what to tell you. Don't know what to tell. I'm a hard guy to get along with. Can't stay on time. Okay, so we've got that clearly established. And then with the background, when I find this background, I find it and I want it in relationship to my black and my black and my shadow. Okay, and this was that we had, and I like it, but look at how colorful it appears. And I know that's not very colorful, but it still appears very colorful, doesn't it? Well, one way you could kill that color in there or neutralize it and make it more harmonious is if you would take this color and just get a wee bit of it. Just a wee bit of that red, and very lightly stick some of that in here. Well, red is the complement of green, blue, so it's going to neutralize. And it's not going to just neutralize it. Just neutralize. Who cares? No, it's going to neutralize it in a way that it harmonizes with the shadow color. I hope you guys understand what I just told you. Instead of haphazardly neutralizing this so that we can more easily focus on the face, what you're going to do is you're going to neutralize it in a way that harmonizes it with there. In this case, since I don't want to lighten it, I'm going to take the shadow. If I wanted to lighten it, I would take some of my skin tone that I have not mixed up yet. Okay? So let's get that shadow off the forehead. And then let's just rub that in. And do you see the difference there? I hope you can see. Now you're not going to be looking into that background. That shadow wins. And this is always just about looking and seeing what it does. Okay. So from there, then we know if we want to soften the edges, one way of doing that is take this nice, neutral, weak color that's weaker than the shadow, that's lighter than the shadow. And if we put just a bit of it between the shadow and the light, it's going to be for a nice, cool transition that you're not going to want to look at. So on this side of the face, what the air does is it softens the transition between the light and the shadow. On the other side of the face, we've got a couple of other things that aren't facing forward, but that aren't in shadow. Right? Remember, this is going down like that. This is going down. What are they doing there? Well, it's not turning into shadow, but it's going through air. Going through air. So I'm differentiating what's going backwards on the shadow side to what's going back on the light side. Right? And so if this turns our corner here, doesn't go through shadow, it goes through air. Goes through air. We could put air if we needed to soften anything up right here. And then generally the chin and all of that, if we gray that off just a little, you got to be careful with the ladies. You got to be careful with the ladies in graying down the lower third of their face. Why? Because you can give them a beard or stubble really easily. With the women, it's a very sensitive matter because they get manly very quickly. Yeah, oh, I'm so glad you saw that. I'm so glad you saw. So Shakti says it's amazing that the shadow mixed with the background, turning it a bit warm, makes it immediately appear as atmosphere. It's magic. Anytime you add that warm to the dark, it gives it a sense of transparency. But also what it did is it literally just brought the color note of the background closer to the color note of the shadow while weakening this color note. So it harmonizes and lets us look at the shadow. It truly is magic. That solution's unbelievable. So where are we at? So we're turning under on the what? On the what? Where's your words, Jason? Where's your words? Find your words. Use your words. In the light. Let's go find our shadow. Can you guys see that? How that grayness just kind of gives way and makes room then for just the littlest bit of color now. So if we come over to this color, now again, I don't know if it's showing up like this in the picture, but to me overall it looks a little yellow orange. And again, I'm not a professional portrait painter, but I'm going to put a little more red. Now that's going too pink. We don't pink, so maybe is it more orange? Right, it's between the red, and the other thing we've got to do is we want a little bit richer here. Let's see. I feel like we're getting too much here, but let's see. So I'm going to put this, so that's too light, that's too light, that's too light. And that's just like the background. So it takes some time to find that. So that's a little richer, but is that too orange? And you can't tell at this point, right? You can't tell because we've got cad red there, we've got that other light. So what we need to do is we need to make a big flat statement and see how it reads. So this is the cheeks, right, facing forward. Just like the nose faces forwards and comes down the cheek, and on the top of the cheek it faces towards the light, right? And then this cheek, right, is the same plane, and it would go to the corner there. Oops, I'm trying to do this with, that'll save us a little while. There we go. So if that's the rich part of the face, then to bring the nose off of that forward that's also facing that plane, I'm going to darken it and richen it a little bit. Just turn it slightly. So this darker, richer then. Now, it's too dark. Why is that too dark? Because it doesn't come off the shadow. Right? So this is showing me I may be too dark on all of this. So let's take this back to here. Nope, that still doesn't show up like I want it to. And it may not just be showing up because of all of the lighter stuff on here. So if we go a little lighter, grayer for the cheeks, then that might look something like... So we just got to go for it. Let's go for it, because you can't see it until the whole thing is covered. And then as that forehead turns up, it's blanched out a little bit, which means it loses some of its color. Not a lot, but you see it is different. And why? Because that shows that this is facing this way, this is facing this way, and then we're going down this way. So just like the nose had its corners, and we had a corner here, and we've got a corner here, right? What's facing up, let's take away all those lines real quick. What's facing up, that's facing up, that's facing up, that's facing up, or facing the light. A little bit there. Because again, we need these to be big and flat so they read, they carry. Then modifying the notes, softening the edges. That's what's going to get us in there. Right? We see that happening. We see it happening. We see it happening. Okay, so I hope you've got some good info off that. Again, I've spent nearly 30 minutes on this. I was going to limit myself to 15 minutes. It just really goes to show you that it's not me that's in charge. I'm not running the show, so I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I put time limits. I have timers. I do everything I'm supposed to do. I try to be a good boy, stay on time, but it's just not my nature, guys, so let's just relax. Then our highlights happen when they happen on the corners. Right on the corner where that light meets that air. And the light, don't merge down. The forehead would have it. And then in the hair, again, it's going to be like right here. And then on this side, if there's a part, you might get little highlights here. Why? Because it's facing this way, which is facing the light. So it's facing that way, and it's facing, like we said, up. Facing the light. Boom, boom. On the lip, facing the light. Boom. So something like that. So that's as far as I got today. I hope that helps you out on this one. Again, I just wanted to explain kind of the order and how we do this. And then, of course, we've got to go back and soften edges. But I do this crudely, again, so that you can clearly see I'm working with a single shape. A single shape. Oh, I'm not in the right. I got all my layer. I'm on the wrong layer. Okay, there we go. And then where the shadow ends, so here, oops, man, that was a mess. This, where that shadow ends, that's a hard edge. Here's a soft edge. Right? A shadow is going to end here, hard edge, turns soft edge. You see what we're doing? Soft edge, hard edge. So you got to make sure that edge sequence is right in order to make everything look good. So what are we doing here? So that's a hard edge. So soft edge on this side. Nope, that's a hard edge. This is soft edge. Soft edge. All right, this would be soft edge over here. A little bit softer up in here. Hard edge there. Soft edge as that turns around. Okay, and then pretty quickly it'll come to life. Now, this is way too chromatic. So you want to gray those orange colors down. But again, if I was you, I would overshoot right now. It's very, very easy to gray these down, but get them in order, get them there stronger. It's really easy to weaken them, right? And you have to accept, just like making a cake, when you're mixing the batter, it doesn't look like a finished cake. Okay, so there's steps, and the highlight, again, it's just making sure we treat each of these notes and really get it to the nature that we want it. But see, even as I change the edge on that, how that, things start settling in. Okay, I want to keep going. I just don't know how to quit. I'm not a good quitter. Not a good quitter. So, thank you for that. Sue, I'm so glad you sent this in. And I'm so happy that you changed it up. So this is feeling fantastic to me. Just the idea and the placement. There's a lot of glare on here, so I don't know how accurate it's reading. And I do know that you just kind of was doing more of the value study. So I think what we want to do, I'm having a little thunk here. What we want to do is I'm having a hard time, but I love that if we could just be a little more specific. Okay, what are those color relationships? And then, what is that color going to be? And that. So let's see if we can't find a little bit of that today. And again, this is going to be more general. I'm pausing here because there's an interesting relationship, but at the same time, is that about the same size as that? So the problem is when we make things equal, they're not very compelling. So I think we're still going to have to push that relationship a little bit. So here's an idea. Oops. One of these days when I grow up and I know what I'm doing, I'm going to remember to open a new layer every time I come into this program. Right? A boy can dream, right? A boy can dream. So what if we did gray that down a bit like that? And then the other thing is we're going to have to solve where this light's going to come from, that light source problem. And I think with the way they're facing, we're going to have to come in like this. We're going to have to come in like this, which means that the wall that we're seeing has got to be facing that direction, right? Not facing this direction, because this is the shadow side of the rock if the light's coming in this direction. Okay, so once that's solved, then what I'm going to do then is I've got to say that then there might be a corner right here or somewhere where we go from light and turn around into shadow. And now this could be a cast shadow from another rock or something that's on here. But also something we might do So I'm going to have this face this way. Why? To again, we're looking up at this, and we want it to face the sun. Okay? So for that reason, I'm going to let that go down. And then as I go back up here, that will basically mean that this is blocking the sun and throwing a shadow here, however we do that. Then what if somehow, what I'm wondering is, what if somehow this light could come out, somehow trickle down these rocks, and there may be several layers of them or whatever, and just connected with this guy. So then all of this would be connected with that, and instead of two separate shapes, it would be one shape. And you had talked about, I mean, the reason I went with that is because you had talked about that connection, right? And that's the whole subject matter of this. So I now have kind of a cleaner idea. These colors and things aren't easy, guys. They are not easy. By the way, it's going to be very hard to get this to look quote unquote right with just one color. It's going to take a warm and cool, kind of bouncing around on each other a little bit. So I need this dark enough so that the petroglyphs stand on top of it. So that's where I'm starting. And then I also want to get it as gray as I can so that I can get more richness in these little humans up here. All right, so let's change that to that direction. Again, these are ideas, so you can modify them. Okay. Now what if that light's still shown on the top of these things? Oh, yes, please. Yes. You know, and maybe this is too rugged. Again, it takes some time to develop these things. And I kind of just make it up to start with, but then you've got to make sure it makes sense. Right? What do I really want this thing to do or need it to do? Okay, and then when I say make it sense, like that form. And so the shadows on the rock then, okay, and that's way back there. I got to remember that's way back there. So by making them not quite so heavy, not quite so colorful, it'll seem further back. Whoa, somebody just took the whole idea way too far. Now, and this might not even be the type of rocks. Again, I'm going to make up what I want to do, but I want to look like the top kind of rocks it is and all of that. And then if this shadow, if we can get very flat here, it's going to allow us to really focus on what we want to focus on. So what we're doing is we're just taking all those changes out so that the only changes that are happening, or the strongest changes, are where I want you looking. And again, I don't know if I have that tone right or not. Just beginning to think about this. But I'm engaged. I'm here. I'm watching. I'm paying attention. I'm being judgy. I'm just being so judgy. Do I really like that? What is that color? I don't know. I don't think so. That's not work. Boom. But I'm just being aware, but I've kind of got that mindset that, let's see. And again, I don't know that you've got colors that aren't working here, but we just want to cover the canvas a little better. So let's get that covered and then see what we see when we look. I can say that, right? I'm among friends. Let's see what we see. Kind of crazy sounding at first, but so you see as we shrink that, how clear that background gets. Okay, this part of the mountain's in light. This is where we're looking, and then there's some other supporting things in there. We've got some connections, and if you wanted a separation from these guys, right, from instead of one light, two lights, right, that light could run through there and, you know, carry on. And then what do you have? It's like you have this and then you have that connected by the sky. So those are the things I see. And now what did you do, Jason? What have you gone and done? Oh my gosh. Who even gave you a teaching license? You should not be behind a paintbrush. Look at you. You need to be on the railroad tracks. Choo-choo, 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 choo-choo. All the same, all the same, all the same. Boring, 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 boring. Oh my God, you guys got to find a new friend. I am boring. But do you see that? That is a horrible shape. That has got to be fixed. But the only way you spot that to fix it is if you're thinking and working in these simplified fashion. And then on top of these big simple shapes, we can go ahead and what? Refine it. Refine it, refine it. So I hope that gives you some an idea. And I know there's glare, so that may have been part of the problem. But just really seeing what's important. And then what I do is I just add what needs to be added. Well, what do you mean? Well, what if that sky is just, it's not working. We're not kind of getting where we need to be. Well, that's not what I wanted. That's not that. Maybe you need a cloud in the sky. I wouldn't put it right over their heads. But if I had something in here, then that gives me a nice stable triangle. Okay, the possibilities are endless, and I just absolutely freaking love doing this, and this is why I'm so far over on time. But you know what? It's my time. It's our time. Let's do what we want. All right, Mr. Tom, if you're not here, let's see, 9:12. So about an hour, 15-minute in, we're going to talk about the pups. So look at what he did. I love it. Remember how we talked about we needed to bring that? Look at where that dog comes now. Boom. Whereas before, I think he was down here, if I remember right. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. You could have 2 cookies for that one. Okay, so I like that. I like that a lot. It's a question of how much we want to vague this guy out here. I'm thinking about that. What I do notice right away is this line, and to me that just feels too much because, you know, like JJ here, you're wanting to build railroad tracks. I'm telling you guys, we're fence builders. I think we've been building fences for a very, very long time, because if you are not actively not building a fence, guess what's going to show up in your painting? A fence. And for those of you who don't know what I mean, I just mean the same, the same, the same, the same, the same, the same, the same. Right? If our mind goes wandering off somewhere, this is what happens. Oh, dinner and the kids, and oh yeah, I gotta do that and that and that. Oh my goodness. And you just, I mean, that's kind of a red flashing light for anybody watching or looking at the painting going, oh, I just wasn't paying attention here. Which isn't necessarily true. You just may have been paying attention to another aspect of the painting. Those fences are sneaky. But with this so dramatic, right, and so active and so large, I think we would be okay. This is another thing. How do we move through a painting? So I do want to do this, but that's too fast. How can I slow that pace down? Well, what if the first bush is like this, and then maybe there's a second little bush right there, and then our third bush is here. Why here? Well, that dark. So then we could keep him much, much grayer than that, but since it's next to a dark, it will show up as a light. Ooh, clever, 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 clever. And, right, so if that's a base right there, then back here, if the base, you see, I'm leveling the base off, but then making each one connect like that. So I know I show movements like this, but if you put that in there, somebody's gonna get hurt because you're moving at too high rate of speed. You're gonna like hurt somebody's neck or something. I'm looking across. Oh my! Ow! So we got to slow them down. We got to take care of our viewers, right? They're not our enemies. And then the same back here. You know, when you decide where you want to be. Decide where we want to be. We can have some broken waves kind of coming and going, and then maybe like around here I would have no waves. I would have no waves. But I think I might here. Why would I have waves? Well, what is waves? Waves is white in the distance. So although I'm saying waves, the real thought going through my head is, yes, I can take this white, lighter, brighter, larger, and then I can make it a little bit less. Here, and less. And then I could make it even less back here. Oops, that's too dark. Well, that actually might be my white in distance. So, bam. But again, it takes some time to do that. And then what I've got to do is I've got to make everything around that work. So slow those bushes down by getting that horizontal base on it. Right? Do you see that? So what would that look like? What would that look like? Well, first let's get the other pup in there. And I think he's like orange and white, right? Is he orange? Does he have any black? I don't remember. Can't remember. So if I have this down, it's like, oh my God, gee, that's horrible. What are you doing? Well, it kind of works, but if he's not in there, what would you do? Well, you could go grab some atmosphere from the sky from back here. And put a little bit of it in there. And massage it in, just like we did the background for the little grandchild. And then before you know it, oh, that works. Never mind. Right? But instead, we're off running, mixing up all these crazy colors. No, we're going to have a couple of things, 4, maybe 5 things that literally go through space, that go near to far, that are organized and designed. That's all it is. But we have a really hard time accepting that that's the fact there. And we love all these pretty colors. So again, with this here, how can I start that? See, I think a beach more on this level right here is where you want to start. Okay, because that gives you room. To go back into space. Lighter grayer. And we're getting smaller, right? So if things work, use them. When things work, just use them. Okay, so now that beach is 1,000,000 miles, right? And there's not that yellow. We came back with those green grass we were talking about. Shrubs, grasses, whatever it is. It's going to have light and shadow, but we're going here. So if he's looking this direction, then maybe we should use these initial grasses and stuff to boom. That's a long line right there. You might not want to, but I'm very tempted, you know, since this is our bigger thing, I would be tempted to break that up with some of this. And look how this keeps you in the painting. And it's going to move you around a little more. Now, again, it does move you around a little more. Maybe you just want to lay under the sun. Maybe that's too active. Then if it is too active, then don't break that plane. Keep this smaller. But also by doing this, what it's going to do is allow me to, again, get a little smaller with my next one. And I should be getting grayer too, but anyway. And then you can decide how much of that you want or how little of it you want. So, and then the waves, after the waves, so if the waves are white, right, white in the distance, and you don't have to do this, but again, I think it makes it more visually interesting, and that's why I'm choosing to do it. What we need to do is that ocean gets a little darker, right? And that's what will make the land, the sky seems lit. It's not going to be nearly as dark as him, and those trees in the foreground are probably darker and heavier. But just like we put all that distance on the beach, we've got to put that distance in the ocean. We can't have one value there. And my first one's got to be big enough that I can get one or two more in that are smaller. Why? Because that's how you say distance. Lighter grayer. And again, as each one of these goes around the dog, it just makes the thing more convincing. Now, I'm hesitating now because I thought that this was kind of a sunset, but maybe we're just going to keep the sky gray. And then that's going to change everything if we want this to be a sunset. But if not, then when we go to the sky, I want it barely perceivable. So let's call that the first layer of the sky. And then as we come up into the sky, it'll get slightly lighter at first. That is, look, you just look at that. I mean, alarm bells should be going off in your head. Oh my God, you can't do that. That's way too much. No, no, stop, stop. But when you're not paying attention or not thinking about it, you think, oh, what a pretty color. No, you got to call 911, 911. Too much, it's too much. And we'll drop down a little bit again. Oh, too much. But look how I'm going to handle this when I have it too much. But don't do this. I'm just doing this because I'm so far over on time for you guys. Oh, what didn't belong together all of a sudden belongs together. Magic. It's not magic. Just put them together and they belong. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? What's magic is how hard and how deeply these assumptions and things we're doing are planted in our head, and we don't even realize that our subconscious is driving us to do all these things. And then we can't understand why it went wrong. All right, so that would get, oh, I missed part of the sky. But anyway, I think you get the point there. So something like that. And we could carry on. But that's going to be a very, very, very nice painting, I think. All right, so we got a few of you still left. You guys are brave souls. Brave, brave souls. So let's do the last two here. So this is about an hour and a half in, so we can tell them. And on this one, it's we want form. The main thing is light. And what's happening here is what? What's happening? Tell us. For our light sources coming, then these things are going to be backlit. So all you're going to have is a little line of light, which is okay, but basically you're going to have mostly dark painting. And I don't, you know what I mean? because all the trees are going to be dark and everything else. So, you know, some people may say, don't you ever get sick of the light doing that? Aren't you just sick and bored of doing the same thing? The light's always coming in from this side, always. Do you get sick and tired of the sun coming up every day? It's just when things work, they work. The reason we do this is because when light hits something, we go light, shadow, boom. And that's active. If the light comes from right above, you know what happens? That's what it looks like. So you tell me, is this a more exciting moving shape, or is this a more exciting moving shape? Right? And then if we went directly from the side, what happens? If light comes in from here, then what you have is you get this straight up and down, which is a full-on stop. And it's okay for drama, but, you know, have you ever been to a restaurant and, could I have some iced tea, please? No. Jeez. Well, that's what, boom. That's what that stop is. No. 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 It's severe. And so it's not that I'm lazy and I just want to do this. I do this because it makes this and this and this and this have the most interesting active shapes. Okay? So, there's me explaining myself. But there's a reason for that, right? Why is he thinking that way? Why does he do that? So the question is, what do we want to look at? And this was, I know she said this was an assignment, what to do. And again, we could touch some things up and make this look kind of, whoa, good. But there's no satisfaction in that for me. And if you're here, there's probably not enough satisfaction for you, right? We want more. So what is that more that we want? Let's just think about what would happen, and I don't know, but let's just think about what would happen if the light was coming in that way. And since we want to start with darks, let's go to black. And let's keep it warm because it's shadow. And then that would all be dark. That would be dark. Why? Because it's a plane that faces away from the shadow. And then that light you're showing on that side, that would have to be a reflected light or something, right? But this is all going to come in. He's looking up. He'll catch light there, that side. So then this horse is on him. So guess what? That horse is going to be casting a shadow. On him, and then that's going to be turning under the underside, the shadow side of the leg. This is probably all being shadow side of the leg. Okay, turning under. That side of the ear would be in shadow. I'm sure there's some shadow up in there. Okay, again, a little bit crude. And then, and then if we had an orange horse instead of the black horse. Then his shadow, and again, he's facing away from the light here. If the light, well, he could be getting light right there. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. All right, it's all catching shadow. Shadow on that side. And is that turned under a little bit there? Okay. The white horse. The white horse. White and shadow can be tricky. Can be tricky. Okay, so I'm going to try. Let's see. And then so this is actually facing away. So this is the shadow plane here. Shadow, shadow. It would drop some shadow on there. Like that, turning under. And that turns around. So you might have a little form shadow there for the light of the leg. Shadow on that side. So it takes a little while to get the light shadow figured out. But you know, just play a game, take a picture of it. And what would it take? So what would the ground need to be now at this point? What does the ground need to be? Maybe start with some of this. Again, because do we really want to be right here at the bottom? No, we just need we don't need every inch of the horses. We just need enough to tell us, you know, the horse and the legs are there. And as you'll come to find out, you don't have to give very much. People's imagination are strong and they like to use it. And so if you'll leave room for them in your painting, your viewers will be much happier. Now I don't know, because this is the same as the shadow on the horse. So better head there, maybe a little lighter. I don't like that either. Right? I mean, you think something's a good idea, but are you thinking of it in relationship to your whole idea? Right? And, you know, maybe we just leave that right now, and then we might have to come back and work on it. And then we're going further back into space. Right? So instead of that going around those horses at the same, right, we got to show that that's a long walk to get back there. A long walk. And then I would establish some good darks. But relatively, they're not going to be as dark and heavy as the horses up front. But they're holding up thousands and thousands of pounds of leaves and limbs. So you got to make them strong enough to do that. And then if that's just sky behind, well, let's get the green, the foliage. Foil is much more foliage. Let's put some more syllables in there. Syllables are fun. Boom, 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 boom. How are we doing? Man, you guys are still on. Boom, all right. So this is good info, but I just know this is kind of long, so. And again, that dark is probably too heavy. I'm going to have to put a little atmosphere, lighten it up. But again, for sake of time. And then I would make that even weaker. Right? Good takes time. Good takes time. that, then what if our sky, since the sun's coming from the left, we could make that, that's probably too much, but especially with the sky, sometimes I try to see, can I get away with this? Can I get away with that? And I like it that dark because you see how it kind of melds with the trees. So let's see if we can get away with that dark. I'm going to see if I can pull it off. And the reason I want to do this is so that that white horse, it's a white horse, my God. How are you going to keep that thing clean? Okay. That looks a little intense to me. Chroma-wise, I think all of these are probably too intense. So I may have to go back and add some. Right, it looks like it's on the gray scale down there, so oh, it's gray enough. No, that's way too intense. Man, grayer. All right, then as we it'll get a little darker. It tends to get a little dirtier down at the horizon. All the dust and stuff being kicked up. A little bit of warmth in there. Okay. And then generally we'll go a little cleaner and lighter. And to my eye, it seems to be a tad bit green before we go up to the sky. Okay, I realize that I should be making this guy think about you, but I'm having fun, and it's hard to stop. It's hard to stop. So, okay, so if we did something like that, then we're gonna have to need. Is that pretty darn good English? I have to need some halftone on that white. Yeah, and then that bright can hit it. If we went back to the black horse, then what we're going to do to say black and light is we're going to make this just slightly cooler and slightly lighter than the shadow. So I don't know that light would come across that far. Again, don't have pro horse anatomy, so. But something like that, then that black horse very well probably does. Have a highlight or two somewhere on him. Right? Oops, not that one. So something like that. Anyway, that would be my suggestion on that one. And then we're going to do, I said an hour and a half, and it looks like we're going to finish up in 2 hours. So, hey, it's art. It's art. So, basically all we have to do here is edit. All we have to do here is edit. And what I mean by that is we've just got to pick to where we want to go. So I think this is it, huh? I think this is it. So if that's where we're going to start, the first thing we're going to do is just we're going to take everything right around her out. Not necessarily out, just take it out visually. So all these things could still be here, but we're going to play them down. All right, at least right by her. Okay, so we're going to go from her over to those other little fairies. And again, you can go wherever you want, but you have to have the thought. So I'm thinking if this is that, then what if we come around through here? So what does that mean? It means I've got to stop. I've got to stop you going from here. So I've got to take all of this out. That's our riverbank. And if we want to come up here, then I'm going to take all of this out. And we'd flow here. So if I want to go here, I'm going to take that out. All right. Yeah, so we'll do that. We'll do that, and then we'll come here. I like that. We're going to take this out. We'll play that up. We're going to come down here, but that means we've got to take this out. That means we got to take all of that out. All of that out. Let's go back up here. So let's take that out. Let's take that out so we don't go over the side. And then take that out. Okay, so what we just came up with then is what are our riverbanks. How did we come up with the riverbanks? Because we said how we want to move through the canvas, and if that's how we want to move through the canvas, then we need something holding that movement and guiding it. Okay, so let's make this very clear. And so anything that's not black, you're going to play up and try to make more visible. Right? Or along that thing. You still need foreground and background. For instance, the flower is still foreground and that still has to be background. But we want this as a spot to look. So this is kind of an overlay, if you say, with everything you're working on. This tells you what it should be. And what do you mean that tells you what it should be? Well, if you are working here, then we need to make sure you can see that. If you're working here, we need to make sure you cannot see that. If you're working here, we need to make sure you can see that. If you're working here, we need to make sure you cannot see that. See, not see. See, not see. What if it's the same See? Not, what's the same, I don't care if it's the same object. But how am I, just bring the values closer together. Did you hear what I said? This is not hard. This is extremely simple. But we're so uncomfortable not knowing what to do, instead of being lost and trying to find out how we work in these ideas, we go back to our old ways, our evil, evil, evil ways. Instead, be okay being lost and, oh, okay. Okay, so then as we go back, oh, look at that. I forgot to open a layer. Oh my goodness. So, I think that's it. I think we're going to end that there. I can't imagine Janie's still here, but if you are, if you have any questions, let me know. And if not, then that was a fun morning, huh? 2 hours, 6 paintings. And yeah, it was 2 hours, half an hour longer than I said it was going to be. But you did 6 paintings. Come on, what do you guys want? That's all I can do. I'm going to be returning today at 1:30, working, maybe continuing my study from yesterday. I haven't had a chance to look around and see what's up. But we'll be in the studio, and I'm going to keep those to about an hour. And then tonight we'll be back to look at a master's painting. All right? My name's Jason Meyer of Meyer Studio. If you liked what you saw, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel, like and share so much. Thank you guys so much. Like I said, December, 3 times a day, a free education if you want it. A free education, so much good information and reinforcement. The fish really addressed some issues I was having. Right on, right. Go paint, go paint, go paint. That thrills me. I'm going to do the same thing. All right, love all you guys. Paint, make something beautiful, be beautiful. Mr. Tom, all right, buddy. Paint, paint, paint. Make Ziggy worth going in the Louvre. Make it worth going in the Louvre. Bye, everybody.